Today we're going to talk about remote sense for power supplies. What is it and how do I use it? What we have shown here is a diagram of how to set up your power supply for local sensing, which is typically the way the unit is shipped from the factory. What we have is the plus sense terminal is tied to the plus output terminal. The minus sense terminal is attached to the minus output terminal. Over on the right here is the load that is normally hooked up to the power supply. In this case, V out is equal to V set. This voltage here, V out, is equal to whatever the power supply is set for. The problem with this setup is that there's also load lead resistances here on both of the leads. And this causes a voltage drop, which is equal to the resistance of the lead times the current for each side for the plus and the minus terminals. What this does is it reduces the voltage at the load by this equation. V out minus VE1 minus VE2 is the actual voltage over at the load. The problem with this setup is that the voltage at the load is less than the voltage that you set the power supply for, and it is also varying based on I out. There's another configuration called remote sensing where we can actually take the sense leads and bring them directly over to the load. As shown in this diagram, plus sense is brought to the plus terminal of the load, minus sense terminal is brought to the minus terminal of the load. What this allows is the load voltage is then directly proportional to V set. And V out is going to now be greater than V set to overcome the drops in both of the load leads. So now V out increases based on the load voltage plus the voltage drop in the one lead and the voltage drop in the other lead. This allows you to have a voltage output here which compensates for these two drops and provides exactly the voltage that you desire at the load. When using remote sensing, there's a couple things to make sure you do correctly. First of all, make sure the sense wire connections plus sense to plus out are connected and minus sense to minus out are connected correctly. Check if there is a remote local switch on the back of the unit. Make sure it's set to remote sense. Most front panel binding posts do not have remote sense capability, so you can't use this configuration if there's front panel binding posts on the power supply. If the outputs are connected to the device under test through relays, then you need to have separate contacts for each of the leads, plus sense, plus out, minus sense, and minus out. We've also included a quick table here that shows you what the resistance is per foot for different wire gauges shown here, as well as what's the maximum current allowed to be used in these wires. And this table is helpful when trying to figure out how to reduce your load lead drops, as well as making sure you're not running too much current through the wires. I hope this video is helpful and explained a little bit more about remote sensing.